Welcome back to Are You Smarter Than a Libertarian? I'm your host, Jeff. Today I have a guest on, first guest ever on this podcast. He is the Mass Truther. I met him on TikTok. He's commented on my videos. So I'm going to let him speak, tell you about himself, who he is, what he does, and we're going to have a discussion about the government shutdown and the two-party system because we both have some great ideas on how we can solve a lot of these problems. So, Mass, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mass Truther. Like Jeff mentioned, I met him on TikTok, and I really appreciated a lot of the insights he brings. I don't personally identify as libertarian, but there's a lot of libertarian policies and beliefs that I would agree with. My background, I got into politics originally when I graduated college, which was when Trump was getting into politics in 2015. That movement kind of really brought me into it because previously I wasn't too interested in it. And at the time, the way he was presenting himself was really brought a new perspective to me that wasn't like the old politicians were. As I've learned more and as I've started working in politics, I've realized that a lot of the policies and beliefs that he has disagree with my personal morals and ethics, which led me to then learn more about the opposition, which at the time for me was the Democrats or the liberals. And as I learned more and more about what it means to be a liberal, I realized that what I perceived to be liberals were actually leftists, which personally I stand against. But a lot of the liberal beliefs, like specifically free speech, was one that I really align with. So as a result of that, I created this account so I could feel like I had a voice. And then I'm able to meet people like Jeff, or a lot of people in my comments reach out to me or send me messages. And then it gives me a new perspective on ideas that I think I know well about. But a lot of times people give me real life events that change my perspective.
Okay, so you said free speech is a huge thing. I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't believe in hate speech laws because I don't believe there is such a thing as hate speech unless it's a direct incitement to violence. Like like we had politicians like Maxine Waters said, get in people's faces, be aggressive with. No, you have the right to disagree with someone, but you don't have a right to say because you disagree with them, go out and punch a Nazi in the face. That'd be like me going out and say punch a leftist in the face. That is not free speech because you're doing a direct incitement to violence. You're doing a call to it. Free speech is I don't agree with trans people and their objectives with pushing certain belief systems. They have the right to say it. That is not, but me critiquing them is not hate speech. It's just I don't agree with them, and that's me using my free speech. And I think you would agree with this. If I'm not calling for someone to be injured or hurt, then it's really kind of you got to just take it and roll with it and have a thick enough skin to move through life and know that you're going to be offended. Life does not exist not to offend you.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think especially posting videos, if you go and look at the comments in my videos, a lot of times there's just so many hate comments you get. So I especially understand, and I actually appreciate at least some of them. I really appreciate because they may be presenting it or being rude to me, but they're also presenting me with an argument that I have to at least look at and then try to refute, or it sends me to look at more points that maybe broadens my perspective. But I would agree completely. Unless you're trying to physically harm someone or inciting violence, it helps completely to have discourse that's peaceful, or at the very least not violent in this country.
Yeah, and that's 100% true. And let's go and step across the pond and look at England. There was a guy that was arrested for having the Star of David on. He was wearing a necklace with the Star of David. It's like, or England when they said, yeah, if you say mean stuff online, we're going to arrest you. It's like, no, if I say mean stuff online, it's because it's what I believe, and I have a right to that belief. And you see this a lot online. You would agree with this. People will put something out there and then play the victim when they get pushed back. It's like you can't claim victimhood if you put something out for people to consume. Like I'll give you a great example for me personally. I came across this. This woman said, I should not be ridiculed for being child free, single, and in my 30s. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. It's your choice. But you put it out there, expect that people are going to ridicule you. You don't get to claim victim now because you put it out there. And that's the whole thing with free speech is if you put it out there, you have to be prepared to deal with the backlash. Like some of my older videos, I got called like I had fetal alcohol syndrome. People were just coming at me. And it was just like, why are we're not even having constructive discussions. My videos, you notice I don't really attack people personally. I generally try to keep it like, hey, keep it germane to our points. And I've seen your videos, Matt, and I love them because it's you actually are calm about it. You're not screaming. Like, have you ever noticed that? That people they will be screaming, and it's like, no, just because you're loud doesn't mean you're right.
Yes, I've 100% noticed that. And I would say that overall, the theme of free speech is how we got this election result. I think the way that the Biden administration handled the COVID situation was, poor at best. Handling the people that were anti-vaxxers by just trying to silence them or censor them was just the exact opposite of free speech. And, even at the time being, more liberal aligned, I was still very against that. And as a result of all the free speech, censorship, and then almost, I don't really love the term woke, but I understand where it comes from and why people say it. Almost like the woke kind of cancel culture led to Trump getting elected. So I blame that, not specifically, but that's a part of the problem, I think.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the problem is people just not sitting down and being able to have a discussion on anything anymore. I think that's a societal problem because honestly, I heard a teacher because I drive Uber here in Chicago. I'm going to give you a little bit. I'm from Chicago. I live in Chicago right now. I drive Uber up here, and I had a teacher tell me that kids will tell them, "Why do I need to learn how to read? I can just have a computer read it to me. I don't need to know how to read cursive anymore." And that's a problem because what are the founding documents of our country written in? Cursive. And if you can't read it, you can't understand what they say, and you're counting on someone else to tell you what they mean. So that's one of the big things I've noticed too is like people are mentally lazy because we have so much information at our hands. We don't really want to do anything with it because let's be real, social media, for all the good it does, is a distraction at the end of the day for everyone. We all like you probably notice this like if you like I turn off my notifications because if I were to get notified every time someone liked something, I would be glued to my phone. And I've had to kind of step back from that. It's like I only jump on TikTok to check stuff maybe 3, 4 times a day now. Because I can't be on it like that. So, but that's one thing I think we need to solve. And Matthew, do you have any ideas how we could maybe work around this to where people could actually start having a civil conversation?
Well, I think for starters, once Trump gets out of office, I think that the political climate in this country will calm down. And as a result of that, I think that people will be more open to having conversations. And then there's a lot of foreign affairs right now that our government seems to be focused on. And I think that some of those could come to an end, or at the very least, could become less serious, which would then foster an environment within our Congress and Senate where they maybe are focusing on America more. And when it comes to focusing on America, I would hope that maybe our citizens could recognize that they need to come together and have some sort of agreement to get this government up and running. And then we have an issue with affordability in this country, coming from, the rent prices going up so much, the food prices, gas is actually doing somewhat well, but overall it's just income inequality is increasing. And it seems like, the people have the power. And as soon as we realize that, we should be able to fix that.
And like I agree to a certain extent. I don't think I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I'm looking at stuff in 100-year segments. I don't think this country is limping along, and honestly, I don't think it's going to last. I think we're going to have a soft civil war where you're going to have blue states say we're going to keep money out of the federal system, And you're going to have red states that are going to go, well, then screw you. We're not going to give you the resources that you need. And ultimately, it's just the natural cycle of a country. We can rile against it all we want, but we're no different than any other countries. 19 of the 20 empires throughout history have all fallen. And it's what makes us think we're any different than that. Like, that's the real of the real. And because people become so ideologically entrenched, you can't even have a conversation. Like, if you go to some of my videos where I'm talking about, like, there was a guy by the name of Jennings. I did a podcast on him. He wrote Color, Communism, and Common Sense, where he talked about he was a member of the Communist Party of America in the 1930s and 40s. He left the party in the 50s when he realized what was going on with the communists. They were infiltrating black churches. They didn't really care about black liberation or equality. They wanted to topple the government, and that's how they went about doing it. And if you look at it, what the Communist Party did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and into the 60s, that's the exact same method that people on the far left are using, in my eyes. Because what are they doing? They're talking about us versus them. That is, when you look at Marxism at its core, there's only one lens that it looks through: oppressed and the oppressor. Well, here's the thing: throughout history, everyone's been the oppressor and everyone's been the oppressed. It's just how the world works. But you can't look at it through that lens, otherwise you'll never see opportunities that present themselves for everyone.
Well, do you mind if I get back to that point? You brought up about how you think this country, maybe within 100 years, is going to have a soft civil war, and that
The soft civil war is already getting ready to start, because you have politicians on both sides entrenching. You have people on both sides entrenching that you can't. I can present the facts to a leftist, and they will not agree with me just off of that I'm not in their camp. And when you look at it, but there's a thing called an in-group bias. We Because it breaks down to, when you look at how conservatives versus liberals engage with, let's say, minorities, for example. When I meet a minority that's successful, you know what I do? I don't say, "Wow, you're so impressed." No, I say, "Congratulations, good job. I'm proud of you, man." And then I go on about my day. I don't have to be in there, because I don't believe in saying anyone cannot do it. You just People just have to be kind of educated and shown that there's opportunity everywhere in this world. We just have to show people that, hey, I'm not the enemy. I want you to be a success. I want everyone to be a success, whatever their definition of success is. But I don't think everyone will be successful, because math just says that will not happen at the end of the day. I think we can agree with that math says not everyone's going to be a success. And
that's true.
that's where I get into, like, when I talk about, like, social issues like gentrification. For me, my issue is that don't blame people that from outside the community that see the economic opportunities. Where the leaders in your community saying, "Hey, let's buy up our blocks, form a co-op, so that when stuff starts to change around us, we have the political power and we have the economic power to say, no, we are not selling to you." That is my biggest thing. It's about personal responsibility and also taking accountability. You're responsible for your life at the end of the day. No one else owes you anything. You get out of the world exactly what you put into it. That's all there is to it. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day, and what you do with that determines your success.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And I think, to your point about how if you brought up a argument to someone that would be a leftist, or like you could a fascist or something like that, and they would just disagree with you just based on ideology alone, I think part of that is just the propaganda and then the misinformation that they've probably been fed. But then that's also coupled with just the political climate as a whole. We see what happened to Charlie Kirk. We see what happened to the politicians in Minnesota. Like it's just a time right now where people if you present them with an argument that refutes their points or even disagrees with it, they just tie their emotions into things rather than taking a step back, maybe taking a breath and then speaking.
See, that's actually true. That touches on another thing that I deal with as well when I'm out in my everyday life is people are so emotionally driven because when you think about it, if someone is so indoctrinated into a belief system, whatever belief system that is, I don't care. But they built their entire identity around it. They built their entire personality around it. You challenge that with facts, they have only two options at that point: accept the new information, but their ego won't let that happen because then that distorts everything that they are psychologically because they don't know who they are because their paradigm has been shifted, or they can integrate it and go, let me figure out how to incorporate this into my belief system and grow from it. But most people, when you trigger their emotions, because we are emotional creatures, when we trigger people's emotions, they instantly become entrenched and they sink their heels into the ground, and then it's like trying to talk to a brick wall. And like you've watched some of my videos, Matt, I don't generally do a lot of appeals to emotion. I generally am kind of factual with like boom, 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 going down the rails. And
Yes, I have watched your videos and I have noticed that, and that's something that it really helps if you're just trying to present just factual statements that people can look at and say, okay, well, he's clearly just calm and presenting this information that's probably true. I 100% agree with that take. I personally think appeals to emotions work well. Obviously, if you're trying to kind of farm engagement or kind of get people that are passionate about the topics, or in a positive or negative way, speak to you about it, which is kind of what my goal, at least with my accounts, is I'm trying to talk to people and I'm kind of trying to hear perspectives. So emotional appeals or speaking, passionately, kind of comes naturally with that.
Oh, I agree. Like if you see my videos, I speak very passionately about stuff, but I'm not driven by I don't respond real emotionally. I used to, but then I kind of got called out by one of my friends on it, and it's like, okay, let me go back and figure out how to do engagement to where I don't respond with emotion. I always try to direct like some of my comments. People go completely off the rails, like with some of my comments to all comments, black rednecks and white liberals. They'll go off the rails with it. I'll be like, no, this is not germane to the video. Let's bring it back to the point because that's what we like to do, and I used to do that. Because I debate people, I like to debate. It's fun. We're not actually having a debate here. We're having a conversation, and I actually enjoy it a lot more sometimes. But it doesn't work when you bring people so emotional because they really start to sink in and entrench, and it's like, how can you be open to anything if you're so if you're so easily manipulated by emotions? And that's the secret. If you ever wonder how politicians work, they never really talk about facts. Trump, Kamala, Biden, Walz, all of them did it. It's emotions. But what happens when you make decisions based purely off emotions with no facts? You get the Patriot Act. You get the National Defense Authorization Act in '08 that Obama signed. You get stuff rammed through based off of just emotions and no real facts to back it up. And when you do that, then you look around after the emotions wear off and the adrenaline dies. You're like, what the hell did we just do? And now it's like, well, it's too late. You already kicked that door open, and it ain't closing again.
I would agree completely. And I think part of why people jump to emotions so quickly is that natural fight or flight response that we have. They feel attacked by an opposing viewpoint. And as a result of that, they feel the need to jump and fight back at what you're saying when in reality, you're not physically attacking them. They're not actually in danger, but just their mind unconsciously thinks that. So then they jump to aggression right away when in reality, they could just calmly take breaths and they could have a nice conversation with you and then come to an agreement, or you could even just disagree respectfully.
Yeah. And that's what I do. Like, I'm one of those people. For being a libertarian, I'm actually, funny enough, I'm actually very much pro life, but I don't argue for it from a moralistic point of view. I argue for it from a very logical point of view. Same thing I did with empathy as well, because I don't believe empathy exists. Empathy is one of the worst things you can have in a society. And you may disagree with this, but empathy is one of the worst because it removes objectivity. I would rather have sympathy because, Matt, let me ask you this question. Would you rather have me go, I know how you feel, or would you rather have me go, Matt, I know you're going through something. What do you need from me? Which one would you rather have?
I definitely take the second one.
And that is sympathy because that way I'm not imposing myself saying, I know how you feel. Empathy was a kind of a political term. Sympathy is, I don't have your lived experiences, but I can understand kind of what you're going through. And I put the onus on you to tell me what you need of me while I'm present, whether it's just to sit with you or to go and get you something to eat. But the onus is on you to tell me what you need because only you know what you need. I'm not a mind reader. That's mind reading is not real for everyone out there. I ask you what you need so that you can tell me so I can best serve you. That allows me to serve the people I care about. Is what do you need from me? Not I know what you need. No, I don't know what you need.
So I would agree with specifically one part you were saying about that, where you're saying, just tell me what you need. I think me personally, I am a Christian and I understand the golden rule comes from that. I personally don't really think that the golden rule is that useful to, do unto others what you'd want done to yourself. Oftentimes, what I would want, someone else maybe wouldn't want in that scenario. So I would agree, just asking what they want would be best. But then as far as the empathy goes, I would say there's situationally where empathy is useful. And as far as the whole concept you're talking about, I would agree. I would just replace empathy with just a objective set moral framework. I think that morals are a human-made thing, not a God didn't make them. I think humans made them.
I
And
can agree to that.
I think it's a lot easier to just trust that you're going to do the right thing in a situation rather than having a set moral framework that you have to follow every single time, because there's going to be situations where that may not work.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And because morality, I honestly believe, comes from society, like going back to the whole helping your fellow human out. That is an evolutionary genetic response. It's a biological response. And that is why we do it because we get a reward for it because we realize that it helps society as a whole. And where I disagree with both the right and the left on is I don't believe people should be forced to help. No one is obligated to help you. I I help where I can, but I don't look to anyone or expect anyone to help me because that is putting a burden on someone else that if they don't meet it, I become disappointed in it, which I think is a huge issue. You should want to help because yeah, you get the dopamine, norepinephrine, all the good brain chemicals. But if you are counting on someone to help you and they don't, you become disappointed in them. And that is a huge thing because they may not care that you're disappointed in them, but it affects you more than anything else. They're like, oh man, I was really counting on this to happen and it didn't. Man, now I'm down. But I don't expect people to help me. If they want to help me, great, cool. I'm grateful for it, but I don't expect it. And that's the thing I think we have to get away from expecting everybody to help everybody else. No, because I equate it to the airline. What do they tell you when you get on a plane? The first rule: secure your mask first before helping anyone else. And I think we've kind of lost that plot that, hey, we need to make sure our house is straight before we go and try to play Captain Save the World. And that applies both on a personal level, a societal level, and a governmental level.
So I would agree with you for that on the most part, that we need to, or at least I think you're kind of alluding to that you think we need to focus on American issues first rather than world issues. Is that correct?
No, we need to focus on individual issues because I have a different outlook when it comes to individual issues. like I ask this question to a lot of people. What is the smallest minority in the world? It's not a rhetorical question. What do you believe the smallest minority in the world is?
Smallest minority. Are we talking religion, race?
Nope, just the smallest minority in the world, full stop.
Could be anything. Maybe people with red hair.
No, there are two of them right now looking at each other.
I mean, I don't know if I have red
Yeah.
hair. But,
No, the individual is the smallest minority in the world because
Oh,
you and your I can
individual.
go through, huh?
You're saying just because there's only one?
Yes, the individual is the smallest minority in the world because no two individuals are alike, even if they're familial, because they have different passions, different wants, needs, and desires. That is who it starts with. It starts with the individual because that is the smallest minority. Once you can take care of the individual, then you can expand it further out, but you have to build a solid base with the individual before you can try to change the rest of the world. Because as they say, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with what? One step. And that one step is you. Because you can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself. And that's why the individual is the smallest minority in the world, because even families don't have everyone agreeing on everything. So how can you say that that's a unit, or like they use like Asian Americans? Well, guess what? There are Indians, Chinese, Koreans, Japanese, Laotians, Vietnamese. Guess what? They have different cultural experiences, different wants, needs, and desires. So why do we try to typecast them together unless we're trying to create an easy voting block?
So
That's how I.
what would you say? This is sort of a little bit of a pivot, but how would you handle our healthcare system in America?
Our healthcare system, first off, I would get the government out of running any type of it because I'm a vet and trust me, I've seen how poorly run the VA is. I would allow people to buy a la carte health insurance. Pick the parts of the plan you want and need and pay for that. Don't make blanket plans because then you can mitigate the risk. Because I'm 41. I have different health insurance requirements that I view for myself personally than someone who is 21. So it's like, why do we try to fit uniform plans? Because the individual should be the one ultimately making their healthcare decision. You make it portable across state lines. That's a huge issue because health insurance is not always portable across state lines. And what you can do then is once you realize that the government is not going to come in and save you, people will step up because people are either genuinely nice or they want to get something out of it. Because before you had Medicare and Medicaid, you had mutual aid societies, you had charities that would help with healthcare. You had poor hospitals. There's actually one here in Chicago, out on the west side, out on the far west side. You also have concierge medicine because everything is subscription now. Chevy is getting ready to go to a subscription model for their car, because you can't use Apple CarPlay anymore or Google CarPlay in their new vehicles from like 27 going forward. But there are two doctors in Oregon that created a subscription model. You pay $50, you get X number of benefits. You pay $100, you get X number of benefits. And they found out that actually the lab costs were about 95% cheaper than going through insurance, because with insurance, you run into the paperwork requirement, the bureaucracy of it. And that is one of the largest expenditures in insurance is bureaucracy. Because there's so many regulations and doctors have to fight for so long to get paid. Medicare, Medicaid is the same way. Doctors have to really fight for it. And it's like, if I go to school for 12 fucking years and I'm doing it, it's like, why should I have to wait 6 months to be paid on something? At the end of the day, that is the inefficiencies of the system, because we don't, and people need to understand this, we don't have a free market. We've never had a free market in the system. Like, I'm going to go and do a video probably next week about John D. Rockefeller and how by 1911, when his trust was finally broke up, he didn't even control 60% of the oil industry. The only reason he was able to get the monopoly he had was because he was able to bribe politicians and use government to enforce the mechanisms for his business. It was never because he was a great capitalist, it was because he used government to leverage, which goes back to the whole problem of the larger you make the House of Representatives, boom, you can't bribe people like that.
So I would agree with that healthcare take you had, but I would also say that, you know, because of the bureaucracy that you mentioned and the billionaires giving money to the politicians, like you brought up with Rockefeller, I think a lot of radical reform, like you suggested, would be really tough, if not even, impossible to do on a national level. So, my stance would be where I would say I think that's a good idea. I think that my camp, or what I'm trying to do, is maybe try to get into position of politics, whether ideally local, and just try to, like you mentioned, you want to bring it down to a local level, make local change, because I think
Hmm.
it would be a great effect on your life based on local policies, even more than national policies a lot of the time.
Yeah, because here's the thing. It's like the people talking about the federal minimum wage. There should not be a federal minimum wage because why should someone in DC determine that $25 an hour or $20 an hour in Chicago? They already pay close to $20 an hour. It would do nothing for it. And state for the minimum wage is because here's the thing people don't understand. When you look at the numbers, less than 2% of the working population in this country makes the federal minimum wage. Everyone makes 10, 11, 12, $20 an hour. So doing that is nothing more than political grandstanding and, like you said, playing on emotions. Because if I can get you all riled up on an emotional thing, you're not going to see what I'm really doing because I got you totally looking the other way. Still sleight of hand.
I would agree with that completely, and I think that's in a way how Trump got elected. Some people say it's fear mongering. I think it's just in a simpler way. He just understood how his base felt. He understood how they were feeling, and he spoke to their emotions. Like you mentioned before, he doesn't really talk a lot about facts, or if he does, a lot of the times they're wrong. So him just knowing to speak to emotions, I think, that's what really he does great, and that's how he got elected. And I know that they want to try to run Vance in 2028. I don't think he does that as well. So I think that, unless they put up a different candidate or the Democrats run Kamala again, I think that
Oh God, if the Democrats run her, it's gonna be bad because I just see that like the only way I can see Vance being successful in running for president in 28 is he has a little bit of Trump's charisma, but he's more so kind of the everyman sort of mentality with how he was brought up, how he was raised, his backstory gives a great everyman perspective. And he's not quite as bombastic as Trump is, but Trump's entire personality and brand is him. He is the center of the show. I don't fault him for that because that is who he is, and he's been president twice. So his brand works for him, and that's the thing is I think Vance has a real opportunity if he picks the right running mate. Because who are the Democrats going to throw up? Who is likable among their party right now?
it's a tough question because, Kamala, I don't think would do well. I think I'm not really a huge Gavin Newsom guy. I think, Bernie's too old. I really like Bernie. He's just too old at this point, though.
Yeah.
Um, AOC, I think if she was able to come a little bit more center, she has a lot of passionate fans. I think she would do better than those other ones. But I would say with the Vance one, I think he has, everyday man origins, but the connection with Peter Thiel and then going to Yale Law School, to me, it seems like he maybe used to be like that. But the connections with Peter Thiel, who I don't know if you saw that interview with him where he, alludes or he can't answer straight up if he wants the human race to survive. That's just kind of shady to me. So I would prefer the Republicans if they were to run someone to run a not a MAGA candidate and more of a old-fashioned conservative, and then I would prefer the Democrats to run a new younger face who wasn't able to even maybe run last election.
See, I could like for the Republicans, I would not be totally opposed to a Rand Paul and Thomas Massey ticket. I would think that would actually because they're very libertarian, they're very fiscally conservative, which I love because when you're 37, almost 38 trillion in debt, you kind of have to realize that austerity is coming and it's going to come hard. As far as the Democrats, I don't know if you'd want to go as maybe far as like and Zoran Mondami is a great example of where I think the Democrat Party is going because that's the new kind of vanguard coming out. That does not resonate with the American public because I don't see someone like him with what he's proposing. Any of his policies make sense to me. The free public transit, they tried that and they still lost money. Now just think when you do it on a citywide level. Same thing here in Chicago. We are 700 million in the red with CTA right now. And it's not that we don't have the money. We had the money. We chose to spend it on something else. And now they're demanding that, like I said, I drive Uber. People are going to they're actually trying to propose a tax that riders will have to pay to use Uber, to use DoorDash, to do any of it. They already put a 50 cents tax on placing sports bets. Per bet you pay 50 cents. And the state of Illinois and Chicago is still in the red. So we need to understand that we can't keep going business as usual, trying to take care of everybody. Because as in economics, as with everything in life, there's trade-offs. You can never get everything you want. Thomas Sowell talks about that a lot. So does Maury Rothbard, Hayek. They're trade-offs. Like there's a trade-off right now for you and me. I could be driving Uber right now, but I decided this is more valuable to me and I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than working. And that's a trade-off. And that's what I think people don't understand is everyone wants everything, but they don't understand. Tax the billionaire class. Great, cool. You take everything from all the billionaires in this country. You know how long you would run the government at current spending? Less than a year. And that is the problem with that mentality is because you're killing the golden goose. For people who don't know the story of the golden goose, basically this farmer, he finds a golden goose. It lays one golden egg a day or a week. And the farmer doesn't want to wait. So he kills the goose, cuts him open, and gets the last golden egg. But guess what? There's no more goose to give golden eggs. Yeah, you got the problem solved, but you just created a whole bunch of unintended consequences. And that's the thing I think we need to be careful about on both sides of the aisle is this spending that we do with no ways to actually pay for it. Because people don't realize the top 10% of people pay almost 90% of all federal income that comes into the government. So they actually do pay their fair share. They're just smart with the money they do have of making it more money for them, which you can do yourself, even at my level, making $50,000 a year. I can move my money around and buy assets, and then I can leverage those. Like I just started another business, and I'm going to use that and leverage that to build it even more. I'm not doing anything shady. I'm just using the system how it is. So I think people need to learn that mindset of figure out how to be inside the system and use the system to advance yourself. Because when you can take care of yourself, guess what? You can bring other people along. You can show them how to do stuff that you do. But if you believe that you can't advance, that you're stuck at this position, then you can't help anyone else. Because people realize people go up and down the social ladder. You have millionaires, pro athletes. 5 years after, they're broke and destitute. People can move up and down. It's very easy to do. You just have to have the actual want and desire within yourself to do it. Because when you look jealously at other people that are successful, you don't look at what gifts you have inside you that can make you just as successful as them.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would tie this back to a point of, do you know the story of Sisyphus?
No, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't.
It's a Greek mythology, basically, of a man who he tried to defy the gods, so he was eternally punished to push a boulder
Oh, push the boulder up the. Yep. Okay.
up a hill, and then it would roll back down. And you have to do the same thing the next day. I
Hmm.
would say that's kind of what life is like. You're just getting up and you're doing the same thing every single day. And you can kind of have the victim mentality of, life is meaningless, or, I have to do this, I have to do that. But you could also do what Sisyphus does, which is, he has to do that every day. So what? Like, you could do that with passion. You could live in defiance of, that rock is the meaningless world, or all the issues you have in your life. Well, you could choose to just let that rock control you and be like, oh man, I gotta push this rock up the hill. Or you could, live in defiance and be like, well, so what if I have all these things hurting me, so what if I think the world's meaningless? Like, I'm gonna live regardless.
Hmm. And that's very true. And I just wish people would have that more so that understanding. And I know we've kind of gotten off what we were originally talking about, but I think this is
Spoilers.
actually, but this I think is a more important conversation for people to actually hear. Is about just because I've learned through my life, and I love this. One of my business coaches taught me this. He's a multimillionaire now. He said you can be born poor and it is not your fault, but you die poor, it is your fault. Is we tell people all the time not to see the economic opportunities all around them. Look, going back to the gentrification, that's a phenomenal example of all these opportunities that lay all around you. Like where I live right now, its nickname is Terror Town. It is we have shootings. It's a rough area, but they're building a huge data center at the old U.S. Steel site on the lake. That means this area is going to become really high tech. There's going to be a lot of people. Going to be a lot of people coming in here, and they're already building a new mixed-use high-rise right by the metro station out here. So it's let's go and buy up the community so that we have the power when someone wants to come in. We can get justly compensated and not just be forced to change. We have the power then. And that's what I think people don't understand. And that's where I believe in the individual ultimately has to make a choice, goes, no, I want to be different today. And people get so comfortable in a routine, and I'm guilty of this too, even with a company. Because I wake up at 4, go to work at 5, back at 9, work on my company, eat breakfast, and go back out to work. Today is my first day off that I've taken the entire day off. But this is helping me, and I don't know where this is going to lead, but it's great. I'm grateful that I have the ability to do that because I chose to do it. I sacrificed working longer so that I could have the day off to build something for myself. And that's really what it is. But I mean, how much longer do you want to go? I mean, we're at almost 45 minutes. We were saying it's going to be about 30, but this has been kind of going real nice. So, I mean,
we can go further if you're interested, or we could stop this now, and we could, if you're interested in doing this again another time, I would
yeah,
be sure. So we could do either one of those things.
yeah. Let's wrap it up. I'm gonna wrap it up. Shout out all your social media, and and then I will be in touch with you when this video gets uploaded because it's going to get uploaded on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Rumble.
Okay.
And I'll send you all the links for that.
Oh, great. Thank you. Do you want to just be like, hey, I'm going to tell them to shout out his social medias, or do you just want me to just say it right now?
Hey, Matt, shout out your social medias, and then I will talk to you. We'll talk offline about the next interview.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff. You can find me at Masked Truther on X, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Like I said, thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to coming on again.
Hey, Matt, it was great having you on. For everyone, I will make sure I put his social medias in the description. Please send them to me because I'm just not going to remember them. So just send them to me. I'll put him in the description. Please follow him, like his content, comment on it. He's a great person, even though we only get to see his eyes. But that's part of the mystique, and that's part of who he is, and that's a great thing because he's being authentically true to himself. So until next week, as always, stay free, stay informed, stay accountable. Have a great day.